Welcome everyone to the Bookfest Storytelling Festival and Story Slam. We just finished our festival with students and now we're ready for a Story Slam. Now, in just a minute, I'm going to pass out a paper to you and a pencil because each of you is going to vote for the favorite story of the day. And that person will receive a $50 award from Easthampton City Arts. I also have, however, other prizes for every storyteller because I believe stories are gifts. And when you receive a gift, you give a gift. So we're going to do that today for all our storytellers. I should mention that the Easthampton Cultural Arts is also supporting my grant for doing storytelling at Mill 180 and this particular story slam this afternoon. Pardon me? Cultural Council. Cultural Council. What did I say? Easthampton Cultural Council. Yes, thank you for correcting me, Teresa. So I think with those introductions, I would like to just say another word about an important organization. The organization is called the National Storytelling Network, and I happen to be on the board. I'm the Northeast Director. So I have these lovely rack cards that if you haven't received one, I'm going to ask my dear friend Steve Herman to give them out to you if you raise your hand, and you'll know all about the wonderful magazine once you join that you get that tells all about storytelling around the world, not just in the United States. And in this magazine, there are 4 stories every time the issue. It's issued 3 times a year. And there are stories in there that are not copyright protected anymore. That's an important thing to know, that when we tell stories, we ask permission if it is a story that belongs to someone else, either written or that we heard. And if we're telling their version, then we ask permission. And I have never had anyone say no. But that's just something to know, that in this wonderful magazine, each issue are stories that you don't have to do that with. So today we're having a story slam, and we have people from as far away as Vermont and lower down in that southern Connecticut area from Stratford, and we have people from New Hampshire, and we have, of course, people all over, including from Boston, from Massachusetts. So I would like to have you enjoy these stories. Please do not leave during a person's story. Wait until between the stories if you have an emergency and you need to leave. The bathroom is way down the hall there. And the other thing is, we all carry our phones with us, but I'm going to tell you now, it's a lot more fun to have your phone on vibrate. So please do that right now. Right now, check your phone, even if you think you did it, because we don't want to have the phone beeping and going off during our, thank you for doing that. Thank you very much. So I think I've mentioned mostly everything. We do have an emergency door here as well as in the back. That's my stewardess kind of thing. One here, one there. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Nina Lasiga, who is all the way from down in Stratford, Connecticut. And I know her through something that I can't even pronounce, Pechakucha, but that's not the way you pronounce it. Only some people, like ones that are from Easthampton, pronounce it that way. She can tell you what the proper Japanese pronunciation is, Pechakacha. Did I say it right?
Yes, Pachakacha, and it's a version of visual storytelling where your story lasts exactly 400 seconds.
So would you please welcome Nina?
Thank you. I made a confession. I'm a closet musician. It was fall of 2017, and I was in New York City. I was visiting an artist's studio. His name is Kalen, and he's a puppeteer. And he mostly performs in the subway system. And his artistry is way out there. And we're 30 years apart in age. I said to him, I've been thinking lately about performing in public, but that's all it is. It's just thoughts, and I don't actually do it. And he said, wait a minute. And he goes into a cupboard and he goes, I want to invite you to perform in Global Elevator Day. It's a day of performances and art exhibits inside elevators. Will you do it? I said, no. But when I got home, I looked up elevator art. I Googled it, and I found Victorian mansions decorated inside an elevator. I saw exotic costumes and unusual people, and I saw one set of doors open to a symphony orchestra. It was museum quality. My heart started to pound. This was me. I changed my mind. My place, Macy's Herald Square. When I was growing up in New York City, my mom always took her and her daughters there after we visited Radio City Music Hall and Rockefeller Center. And we would ride up the antique wooden escalators and take the elevators down. So I mentioned to Kalen what my plan was, and he said, Nina, you could have a run-in with security. And I said, come on now, is Macy's gonna throw grandma out of an elevator for singing a song of friendship? I don't think so. But I well knew that the city was under a red security alert. Recently, during Halloween, there was an explosion in the city that was terror-related, but I took my chances. December 12th, I stood outside of Macy's where they have the parade every year. I took a deep breath and I entered inside. And I took no more than 10 steps into the store. It was so hot inside. I had to put my backpack down so I can take my winter jacket off, and security swoops right in. Is that a ukulele sticking out of your backpack? Why, indeed it is. Of course, of all places, I stopped in front of the Louis Vuitton section and opened a bag next to the most expensive merchandise in the whole store. And he goes, I love the ukulele. Would you play a song? And I'm saying, oh, yes, I'd love to. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. And he said, that was great. You have a great day. And I said, you too. And as I'm walking away, I'm going, happy holidays. And I headed to the bank of elevators in the rear of the store, and it was mob full of holiday shoppers. So I armed my ukulele and got into the first available elevator. and I sang, "You got a friend in me." And people stared above the doors where there was the list of all the departments by the floors. They ignored me like a beggar on the subway. I got off as soon as I could. And I got into the next elevator with a plan. Good morning, everyone. Today is Global Elevator Day. I was chosen especially for Macy's because Santa Claus is here. My story is from Toy Story. Allow me. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. Parents held their children tighter. Children looked up to me with Christmas morning eyes, and then people started to bob their heads to the beat of the music. And this guy standing right across from me says, "Hey, little lady, do you know how to play Desperado?" I would if I could. I just don't know that one. And I got off at the next floor. I was so thrilled to get a special request, but I was also very creeped out. But it was a sign of success, so I next needed a photograph. I had a digital camera and I was by myself. And there was this nice gentleman standing by the elevator with me, and he was like really boring, normal looking, and I said, "He's perfect." So I said, "Hey, there's room in this next elevator. Could you take a picture of me?" And he says, "Sure." Like I asked him what time it was. And we get on, and people come in behind us, and we get separated. I said to myself, "Oh, kiss your camera goodbye." And then I say out loud, "Are you there?" He replies, "I'm Walter. Who are you?" "Oh, Nina. This is Nina. It's Global Elevator Day. You want to hear a song, Walter?" "Sure." And I play. Sing along if you know it. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. When the road is rough ahead and you're miles and miles. And some people started to smile. And they exited. And there was room for Walter to take my photo. And I said, "Walter, take one here. And take one here. And take one here." And then he got out and he said, "I would love to do that again." I said, "Get back in here." I sang in Macy's until my voice wore out. I spent 3 hours in their elevators, and I learned 2 things. I was a closet musician because I was fearful of making mistakes, and that my audiences couldn't care less. From that day onward, I decided I'm perfectly perfect. I'm playing music my way. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. When the road is rough ahead and you're miles and miles from your nice warm bed, just remember what your old pal said. Oh, you've got a friend in me, yeah. You've got a friend in me. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce to you Lonnie and Chu. Now, their real names are Lonnie and Dave Chu, but I just call them Lonnie and Chu. And I love them dearly. So Lonnie and Dave, would you please come up and share your story? Give them a warm welcome. We only have one mic, unfortunately. So I think you'll be all right, and you use the mic.
Yes, I'll tell the story, and I'm going to move Dave for a little bit. I'm going to sit down if that's all right.
That is
Yeah, because I'm more
great.
comfortable this way. Okay.
Yeah, and this will just go like that.
Super.
Great.
Wake up, the goats are coming. That's the first thing I heard the first day of my first time ever in Spain. I was about 21 years old. I had been sleeping outdoors under the stars next to my then boyfriend on the southern coast of Tenerife in the Canary Islands. And everything was very strange, and I was ready for it because I was only 21 years old and I didn't know a thing. So I lived there for about 6 months on the money that I had made in Bar Harbor the summer before. And Tom spent most of his time being drunk, but that was okay because there were plenty of things to do. And one of the things that actually we managed to do together was to attend a dinner, I don't remember, some holiday. All I remember is the room was on the second floor of a restaurant, and it was full of families. Everybody speaking Spanish. I can barely understand anything that they're saying. And after dinner was over, they don't just jump up and run away. They're going to stick around for hours because it's Spain. And at one point, I heard the sound of a guitar. I need a little guitar flamenco-y sound. And I had never heard this kind of sound before. And then all of a sudden, the room erupted in clapping, but a really rhythmic clapping. And it went on, and it was complicated, and everybody got into it, and I didn't understand what was going on. And then somebody started singing, and the guitar got going, and this clapping, everybody was doing it. 90-year-olds and little tiny babies, and everybody in between was doing this intensely rhythmic clapping. I didn't know what had hit me. And then I found out later on, this was flamenco. This was flamenco music. Nobody danced. They were enjoying just the music, this whole room full of people. So that's how the drug of flamenco first got into my veins. Fast forward some decades, because, you know, when I was raising the kids and all that, and I'd sing around the house a little bit, the only sound I would get back would be, "Ma." That was the response every time I sang. So I sort of sing quietly off in corners or just put up with "Ma." And then I had the good fortune of being able to get rid of the bad ex. Children were raised, pretty much. Well, yeah, there was the young one who was sort of Dave inherited. So I met this cute guy. We were living in Syracuse at the time. I met this cute guy. And it turned out he was the only flamenco guitarist in Syracuse. How lucky is that? I was a Spanish teacher by then. I was really kind of immersed in things Spanish. And one of the first memories I have of doing anything flamenco around him was I was working at the time at Syracuse Language Systems with a whole bunch of software engineers, but we were a foreign language instructional company, and we were all getting like repetitive strain injury. Like, it's like being like in a torture thing where you just have to sit there all day long because you can't move. So your hands are going like this and nothing moves and you get repetitive strain injury. And somebody said, well, why don't we just like dance on our lunch breaks? So we started out with 25 software engineers and me, content manager. And we learned how to do the exercises that go with dancing flamenco. And I thought, oh, this is good because my hands are very good. Okay, they feel better. So we would just like do these exercises. And then somebody said, let's do a sevillana. So for a whole year of lunches, I learned how to do one dance. Whew, the thing is tough. But we got it together, and 25 people disappeared. No, 19 people disappeared. There were 6 of us left. 5 women, 2 of them fabulous dancers from the Ukraine. One of them was a guy who was like related to the Gypsy Kings, right? They've got all this stuff in them already, and I'm from Syracuse, New York. But they let me continue to dance with them, and we brought it out. So one day, our little group of 6 people did the sevillana at a Hispanic festival in downtown Syracuse. And my aunt, who actually was a flamenco dancer, she was quite elderly by then, she showed up with my uncle, and she met Dave, and we spent some time together. And I'll never forget the walk she and I took around the perimeter of the festival just to talk. And I said, well, what do you think of him? And she said, this is all in Spanish. She says, I have one word for you. Consérvalo. Keep him. Okay, so with that, I was ready. Yeah, okay, so he's okay. I will not destroy my children's life again. And we stuck together. That was 22 years ago. So that was Syracuse. So a few years go by, and here's this wonderful person playing flamenco guitar in my house, our house, obviously. And many years go by before I finally think, you know, we probably should do a little something like, let's bring it out into the world. We're both web people, especially this one, and we had some things about flamenco on the web, and so this woman whose husband had gotten transferred to Lockheed Martin in Syracuse, she found us through the web. She's an amazing national level flamenco dancer, and we have her in Syracuse. Let's do something with her. So we did, and she taught us things. She taught us palmas, which is that rhythmic hand clapping. And boy, did I get tired that first month or two, because I'm not used to doing this for like an hour, right? It's not easy. But she taught us a lot of wonderful things, and we got our first gig. It was at the Rochester Erotic Arts Festival. But that's all we had. So I checked with the lady. I said, look, we're not, flamenco's not erotic. It's really more, it's musical and it's sensuous, but ladies are like fully clothed for this. And she said, oh yeah, this Erotic Arts Festival is really just more sensuous than it is erotic. Okay. So we had hired a woman to do the singing, because I was going to do the palmas, and we had a woman who was from Peru, and she sings zarzuela, and she had the whole diva look, and she had the shawls, and she had everything you need, right? So we were prepared. We went on stage with a couple of guitarists. Somebody was playing cajon, the box, the percussive box and all that. And I was back there sitting down doing my palmas, and the diva is up there singing. Now, sensual was going on here. Erotic was going out there in the audience. It was really interesting, a little difficult to stay concentrated, but I was going to do this thing. So I'm back there doing the palmas, which holds the rhythm of these songs. And the singer keeps turning around to me to find out when to start, when to stop, what the words were, and what the rhythm was. And I thought, she looks good, but I can actually do this. So the next day I fired her. And that's how I became a flamenco musician, a flamenco singer in my 50s, was because I fired a woman who looked good. That was Rochester. We played in a few places, Canandaigua. We ended up playing in Buffalo, New York for the opening of a movie that had been made by a woman in Hollywood. And that was a wonderful experience. It's a great movie. Her husband was an actor that we'd seen on TV a number of times, and he bought us sandwiches at the mall. It was so nice. Then there was the week when we somehow ended up with Sergio Aranda, who is one of the rising star dancers from Malaga, Spain. Don't ask me how he ended up at age 17, already a professional dancer in Syracuse in November when it's raining, wearing flip-flops. But that's how we met Sergio, in a terrible laundry on the wrong side of town. The hotel had sent him to the wrong place to do his laundry. So we had a week with him, and it was the scariest time of my life, aside from some, master's level tests. But this guy was just marvelous. He worked with us, and he taught me how to do 12-beat rhythm for the alegrias. And we pulled it off. And that's what we're bringing to you, is what we normally do, which is music. And so this is alegrias. It means joy or happiness. And that's how we're going to end this. Let's do it. Tiriti tran tran tran, tiriti tran 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 tran, tiriti tran tran trero ai, tiriti tran tran tran, tiriti tran tran tran, tiriti tran 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 tran, tiriti tran tran trero ai, tiriti tran tran tran. En el mar pone sus ojos, mire el agua y mire y mira. En el mar pone sus ojos, son los sueños de mi niño, su ternura y su alegría. Son los sueños de mi niño, su ternura y su alegría. Que mira tú las olas, cariño mío, las olas son de plata y el mar bravío, mira, con tu mirada, niño, el mar amansado. Con perlao sobre la cuna, a la orilla del mar. Con perlao sobre la cuna, alfombra en tu paso y va robando la sal. Alfombra en tu paso y va robando la sal. Sobre el azul inmenso de su horizonte, mira fundirse el cielo, cae la noche, cayendo ya la noche, roza tu cara con un barco de estrella y luna blanca. Tiriti tran tran tran, tiriti tran 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 tran, tiriti tran tran trero ai, tiriti tran tran tran, tiriti tran 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 tran, tiriti tran 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 tran, tiriti tran tran trero ai, tiriti tran tran tran.
Thank you. Well, now that we're all warmed up, first is Harold Cox. And he's coming, I think, from Boston, right? Yeah. Yes, let's welcome Harold Cox. And Harold has been in other slams, he's told me, so he's not new to the slam scene. And you saw that I do have a 2-minute warning for you at the end. Okay, good, great. Thank you very much.
When I fly on an airplane, I like to make certain that I take 3 things. I need to take a book, I like to take one of those neck pillows, and I also like to take my big ears. I'll explain. I have a lot of difficulty when I fly on an airplane. When the plane takes off, I'm absolutely fine. When the plane is going forward, I'm fine. But the moment that the plane begins to descend, my ears feel like they are going to burst. Now, a lot of people have this kind of problem as well. And I've always had lots of problems with it. Well, one day when I was particularly having a lot of trouble with my ears, the flight attendant happened to pass by and she said, "Sir, it looks like you're having some problems." And I said, "Yes, I am." She said, "I think it's probably your ears." I said, "Yes, it definitely is." She said, "Look, I think I have a solution for you." So she went back to the galley and she took 2 of those cups that they put water in, and she took 2 paper towels which she had wet with warm water, and she put 1 paper towel in 1 cup and another paper towel in another cup, and then she brought these back to me and she said, "Sir, put these over your ears." A little weird, but I was in great misery at that time, and so I did it. I put them over my ears. I have never felt relief like that ever. The warmth of those towels, this was a really good thing. The plane was able to land, I was okay. So now I have a solution. Lots of people swallow, they chew gum, they do a variety of different things to work on their ears. I know that I need these cups. So every time I got on the plane at that point, I would ask, when the plane was beginning to descend, I would ask for these cups, which I start calling my big ears. And I would get them, and everything would be okay. I did this for years. And then one time I got on the plane, I asked for my big ears as usual, and the airline lady brought them to me. And then as the plane began to get closer to the ground, she said, "Look, sir, the plane is about to land, and we need to pick all the service items." I said, "Ma'am, remember, I need these cups because of my ears." She said, "I understand that, but I need to pick these up because we can't land the plane unless we have picked up all the service items." And I said, "Ma'am, remember, I need these cups." She said, "No, sir, I need these cups as well." So we're going back and forth. "Sir, I need these cups." "Ma'am, I really need these cups." And then she's screaming. And then she looked around and she realizes that she's actually talking to everybody in the plane because they're all looking at us. And so she lowered her voice and she said, "Sir, I need you to know this doesn't really work. This is what we give to kids when they're having problems with their ears, and we want them to concentrate on something else. And besides, you look pretty stupid." So I had to give her my ears at that point, and the plane landed. And then I thought, now I got a really serious problem. She may not believe it, but I know that these cups actually work. But I cannot go to the airplane and ask them for these things again, because I do not want to be that customer on the plane that the flight attendants are in the back and saying, "Ugh, that person in seat 22D is asking for cups. Let's just give them to them and have a good laugh." I don't want to be that person. So I decided, look, I can fix this, but I will buy my own cups. And so I started buying my own cups, and I'd always make certain that I had a couple of cups with me so that when the plane was ready to land, I could put them over my ears. I didn't always have the warm compress, but I thought, okay, this works for me, and it was fine. And I did this for years. And then fairly recently, I was running really late, and the plane was about to take off, and I didn't have my cups, so I bought a whole bunch of them, and I just threw them in my suitcase, because I actually only need 2. I got on the plane, and as usual, when the plane was about to descend, I put my ears over my ears. And the woman sitting next to me is having a problem. Because it is a little strange sitting next to somebody who has cups over their ears and you don't exactly know what's going on. And she wanted to say something, but she really couldn't. And it was kind of like the proverbial elephant in the middle of the room. She wanted to say something, she couldn't say something. I recognized that she was really uncomfortable, and it made me particularly uncomfortable because she was so uncomfortable. And she just tried to look without looking, but she knew that there was a guy sitting next to her with cups over his ears. And so I said the only thing that I knew to say to her at that moment, "Ma'am, would you like a cup?" And she just stared at me. And I thought, this is probably a mistake. And she just stared at me. And then she said, "Yes, I would." So I had extra cups, and I gave her cups. So now she and I actually sitting there with cups over our ears. Now the man who happened to be sitting next to her now looks at her, and I saw this man, and he really wanted to be very far away from this. I could see that he wanted to get up, and he wanted to move, and he was looking around the plane to see if there was someplace else he could move, and he couldn't. And he was staring at this woman that was holding these cups over her ears, and then he looked at me, and I had cups over my ears, and he said, "Can I have some too?" And I said, okay, this is good. So I gave him some cups. So you now have 3 adults who are sitting in the plane holding cups over their ears. I do not know if these people know each other. I don't know them, but it is pretty bizarre that we're all sitting there with cups over our ears. The plane landed, everybody got off. I don't know where they went. I know where I went. I now, when I get on the plane, need to always make certain that I have a book, my neck pillow, and I take extra ears. ears because I know why I need them. But I have learned that sometimes there are other people that need big ears too.
Thank you, Harold. I'm going to remember that. I don't know about anybody else, but that's happened to me. How many have had that happen to them? Where you, oh, it's such pain. No, but I'm going to buy my cups from now on when I travel. So, thank you. Next, we have from Vermont. I mean, I don't think we've ever had one yet from Vermont, a person, that is, who is a storyteller. And her name is Elizabeth Pittman, and she is a mom, a grandma, and a wife, most importantly. And she worked in major life transitions, most notably for adolescents, and in hospice, she was a counselor. And she also teaches Tai Chi, J-I, different than Tai Chi, I believe, although I'm not sure what the difference is. Maybe you could show us, Elizabeth. And so she tells stories about all of these things, and I don't know what her story will be today. Please welcome from Vermont, Elizabeth Pittman.
I'm going to invite you to take a breath with me because I would like to take a breath. Thank you. Taiji and Tai Chi are the same thing. They're as different as Beijing and Peking. It's just a closer spelling and pronunciation. Same thing. Standing in the present moment, I honor the past and bring it to the future. Those words and gestures are part of a longer invocation of spring that I learned from my late Tai Chi teacher, C.L. Tewksbury. And we do it every spring. She came up with ones for every season. And when I was doing it recently, I thought about how awareness in the present moment sometimes awakens me in a way that I can integrate better the past and bring it to my future. So I have two stories. The first, in the early 50s in Atlanta, Georgia, in the wintertime. Yes, Atlanta has a wintertime. It's very different from this wintertime. But it was very cold. It was sleeting. It was miserable enough that my mother actually allowed my father to walk out of the house in his World War II heavy Army overcoat that she despised and he loved. So it was this miserable day, and he put his coat on, and he pulled the collar up, and he put a hat on, and he walked down the street to the bus stop. And he crossed over the next street, and he stood at the bus stop, and eventually the bus comes along. There is no one on the bus but the bus driver. And my father, a nice guy, by way of making conversation, got on the bus and said, "I do not envy you your job today. This must be the most miserable day of the year." And the bus driver looked up at him and said, "This is the day that the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." And Daddy said it hit him like a ton of bricks. And he went and sat down, and it completely turned his day around. Now, he sat back a lot. There were a lot more women than men in my family, and we did a lot of talking. But when he talked, he had stories he liked to tell, and that was one. And so through the 60s and the 70s, when we were all together, every once in a while, we would hear the story of that bus ride and that miserable day that turned into a wonderful day. Daddy died in 1981. We all had young families then, and he and Mama had moved to North Georgia to a little wooded piece of land with a creek and a little fishing pond, and they'd built a house that was big enough for some of us. I have 4 sibs. And eventually they bought another little piece on the other side of the pond that had a little house on it so that we could come together and sort of cram in, sleep on the floor, that kind of thing. So now, 20 years later, I have a sister who she and her husband and child have sold their house. They've come to stay in the little house across the pond. They decide they like it a lot and that they're going to stay. This is not an agreement that we have in our family, and so it caused dissension. So there was back and forth, and they were there for some weeks and then some months. And then there was talk of their building a house. And so they picked a place in the land that was kind of centrally located. And it concerned us that it would sort of separate things. At first, we went along to make peace, and then we thought, no, we really need to think this out more because it's going to make a big difference. So we decided to get together one day in the summer. Well, even up in the North Georgia mountains, it can be hot in the summertime. And so we got together on a very hot day, and we looked at the plat of the land, and we thought about different spots, and we decided we needed to walk the perimeter and crisscross the land. So we walked around and we picked a spot up in the upper right quadrant over on the edge. And we came up with another spot on the lower left quadrant. And my sister was happy enough with those 2 places as options. We had walked a lot. We had drunk all the water we'd taken with us. We were drinking out of the stream. And we revisited this last spot, and then we headed back toward the house. My brother and I were in the lead, and there was a little trash on the ground, and we always tried to pick things up as we went along. And I leaned down and picked up a really dirty piece of styrofoam that said, "Farm Fresh Eggs." And I turned it over and I read, "This is the day which the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." And I handed it to Bill, and he read it, and we waited for our sisters to come, and we passed it around. And it felt like an acknowledgement and a blessing and a benediction from our father, who'd been dead for 20 years. And we were much more peaceful as we headed to Mama's house. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Next, I wanted to say a word about the favorite story of the day. Don't worry about it, because every day it would be a different story if it was a different audience. This is a story that you think for yourself is the favorite story of the day. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, so it's a different kind of story slam than we're used to, where you get, best beginning, best ending, best gestures, best voices, best eye contact, best plot, best alliteration. You could go on and on. Those things all fit in, right? But for the favorite story of a day, I think every audience would have a different story. So it's just whatever you feel today. I forgot to mention that at the beginning, and I wanted to. Next, we have a local person, Tommy Kubitsky, whom I met at the indoor park, Mill 180, because she's a mahjong player. And I happened to see these people when I was doing a workshop there, and there they were around a mahjong table. And Tommy was very eager and clear about what mahjong is. So if anyone's interested in it after, I'm sure she'll tell you too. And please welcome again, Tommy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a little addicted to mahjong. It's a game. So if you want to play every Wednesday at 4 o'clock at Mill 180, where you might run into Gail. I learned mahjong a few years ago while I was living on the retreat center in Connecticut, and the story that I'm about to tell you is a true story. It happened to me while I was living there. It was a very weird little retreat center. We had like organic a farm on it, so the goats and chickens would sometimes come visit me in the office, things like that. But while I was living and working on this retreat center, I was also volunteering with the local fire department. I was an EMT on the ambulance, and every time we'd get a 911 call from the retreat center, I would be the first person there because I was right there. And one night at around 2 a.m., got a phone call. There was a 911 call from within the retreat center. I got up, got dressed, rushed to that room. And when I entered the room, I found there was a woman. She was laying on the bed, and she was laying in the fetal position. Her back was towards the door. She was in terrible, terrible pain. And when I entered her room, she couldn't even pick up her head and look to see who it is that just entered her bedroom. And there wasn't much I could do for her. But I could make sure that she was ready for when the ambulance comes. So, I gathered her purse, her phone, her charger to make sure that she has them when she goes to the hospital. And she told me that she really needed to pee, but she couldn't go to the bathroom because she couldn't even get off her bed. And a few minutes later, I hear the ambulance coming in. And I said to her, listen, the ambulance is here. And if you get on it right now, it will be at least half an hour before you can go to the bathroom. Do you want to make the effort? And I will help you. I'll take you to the bathroom so you can pee before you get onto the ambulance. And she said yes. Well, actually, what she said was, okay. She was in so much pain. So me and another guy, we picked her up. We carried her to the bathroom. Then he left the bathroom. I stood her in front of the toilet. And then I pulled down her pants, I pulled down her underpants, and I slowly lowered her onto the toilet, and she peed. And I reached over to toilet paper, and I cut a length of toilet paper, folded it up, and I handed it to her. And she said, no, I'm a crumpler. To those who didn't get it, she crumples her toilet paper, and I folded it for her. And I've been telling this story for about 4 years since it happened. And it turns out that the population divide is pretty equally between crumplers and folders, and people somehow feel obligated to tell me their toilet paper habits. And I once met a tour guide, and he told me that when he needs to separate a large group of people into two halves, he just tells them, folders on this side, crumplers on this side, and it's always an even split. And there's a few more statistics about this. I only met one person who doesn't fold or crumple. He wads. I'm not sure how you do that. And one other person who folds then crumples. And that's and those are all the types. Thank you.
Who knew? I'll never be in the bathroom again without thinking of that story. Crumpling. Okay. Now, we have someone from New Hampshire, which is far away. So I said I would try to get the people that were furthest away first. So, Papa Joe, would you come up, please? Papa Joe is a storyteller. I just want to say a few words about him. And he is what we call kind of an itinerant storyteller. So, he's not very old, but I want to tell you that this habit of being an itinerant storyteller is a very old thing that has been passed down to us from Ireland and other places where people earn their living that way. And so Papa Joe can go from school to school. He can go from organization to hospital. He can go all over the country because he's like a turtle. He carries his house, not on his back, but around him. Please welcome Papa Joe.
Thank you. And I did start out carrying it. Yes, when I first started traveling around with a backpack and a tent, and so I guess I did carry my house on my back. But once you get a schedule, it's really important to stop hitchhiking and get some more reliable transportations. So I think what I'd like to do for you is a poem, actually, from James Whitcomb Riley. It's one of my very favorites, and since we're doing favorite tales of the day, I'd like to do Little Orphan Annie. Some of you might remember that. Little Orphan Annie came to our house to stay, to wash the cups and saucers up and brush the crumbs away, shoo the chickens off the porch, dust the hearth and sweep, light the fire and bake the bread, earn her board and keep. And all us other children, when the supper things is done, we'd sit around the kitchen fire and have the mostest fun listening to the witch tales that Annie told about. And the goblins that'll get you if you don't watch out. Once there was this little boy who never said his prayers, and when he went to bed one night, away up the stairs, his mama heard him holler, his daddy heard him bawl. But when they turned the covers down, he wasn't there at all. And they seeked him in the rafter room, the cubby holes and press. And they seeked him up the chimney flue, everywhere, I guess. But all they ever found was his pants turned inside out. And the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. And then there was this other girl, she always laughed and grinned. She was making fun of everyone, all her blood and kin. And once, when there was company and old folks was there, she mocked them and she shocked them and she said she didn't care. All this as she kicked up her heels and turned to run and hide. And there were two great big black things a-standing by her side. And they snatched her through the ceiling, for she knowed what she's about. And the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. Little Orphan Annie said, when the blaze is blue and the lamp wick flickers and the wind goes woo and you hear the crickets quit and the moon is gray and all the lightning bugs and dews all squitched away, you better mind your parents and your teachers, fond and dear, and cherish them that loves you, dry an orphan's tear. Help the poor and needy ones that cluster all about, or the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. James Whitcomb Riley. Thank you.
Wow, thank you for that. I remember that. Don't you remember that? I love those old narrative poems because they're stories. They were my favorite that my mother read to me. I love the sound of it as you come. and listen to that story. You know, it's a whole different way of sharing stories. Okay, and Lauren Matone has a story that she would like to share with you. How many of you were here for the children? Well, Lauren was one of the teachers of several of those children. How many of them came? Three came from that school, and I think 3 or 4 came from Hadley, where I had been visiting and after school programs. And then there were another smattering from the homeschool group. But Lauren is a storytelling teacher. And please welcome Lauren Matone.
Thank you. I don't like you for who you are. I remember standing in the hallway, standing at the door, looking at my friend. This was my first year in college. I was far away from home, and I'd finally felt like I'd found the place that I belonged. I remembered standing in the center of the town and thinking, I'm home. This is where I belong. These are my people. And here I am standing in this hallway looking in this woman's face. And you know, when you get to college, you leave town as a child, but the minute you cross the campus, you're a woman. And she's saying to me, I don't like you for who you are. And my first thought was, well, of course she doesn't like me for who I am, because I'm that person. She brought me all the way back to that 5-year-old child. There I was in kindergarten, all the girls, even in kindergarten, who's your boyfriend? And my cousins, who's your boyfriend? Who do you like? I like Chris. I like Chris Barry. All the girls like Chris Barry. He's the one you're supposed to like, right? I can't tell anybody, because the one that I really like is Julianne. She's so cute. She has red hair and she has freckles. She's really sweet. She's the one I like, but I can't tell anybody. I'm only 5 years old, but I know that you can't tell anybody that the person you like is that girl over there, because you're supposed to like boys. So here I am in college. This must be why she doesn't like me. I knew this. I was always that child. All the kids would be playing, and I'd be over here going, I thought I was nice. They don't want to play with me. There's just something wrong. And I don't know, is it that I like girls? Is it that I don't like the things that all the other kids like? I mean, I want to be a baseball player, or I want to ride a horse. You know, I want to do all these things, but there's just something wrong. And that's what I heard when she said to me, I don't like you for who you are. And I carried that, and I carried it back to my room. And I just sat with it, and I thought, here's this person. I thought we were friends. I thought we were people. We were in Glee Club together. We go to Mass together on Sunday. She sits in front of me. How could she say something like that? She told me she liked me. We spent nights. She was my introduction to James Taylor, Simon and Garfunkel. We stayed up all night talking. She knows all my secrets, except that one, because I do like her a little bit. I was hoping. But, you know, I was used to liking people a little bit because I kept it inside. But I didn't want them to know, so I just pretended we can be friends. That must be why she doesn't like me. And I have to tell you, to this day, I don't know why she didn't like me for who I was. I carried this for 35, almost 40 years. And I remember not too long ago, I remember thinking, wait, there was that conversation with my roommate. My roommate wasn't this friend. My roommate was somebody that I ended up with because my first roommate and I, well, when I met my first roommate, her face fell. She must have known me. I don't think she liked me for who I was from the minute she met me. But other people, but my roommate, she was my friend. And I remembered all those years later that we'd had a conversation, and I remember saying, she doesn't deserve a friend like you. But I didn't hear that. I wasn't ready to hear it. But I heard it all those years later, and I thought, I didn't deserve a friend like that. I wonder what she meant by that. Oh, wait, and I started thinking about the person that I was, not just now, not just in college, all the way back to kindergarten. I was the kid who, if somebody was alone, I would go play with them because they must be lonely. I don't want them to be alone. I'll go play with them. And I thought about, well, wait, in college, we had a big snowstorm, and our cook, her car was buried. She couldn't dig herself out. I could dig her out. That's something I can do. I can do that kind of thing. I can do that for somebody. And I started looking at the things that I did, and I thought, wait a second, she didn't like me for who I was? How could she not like me for who I was? Maybe she didn't deserve a friend like me. And not too long ago, and one of the things she shared, that she was one of those people who said, do you know what your roommate said about you? The first one. She said, you're going to tell the whole bus your life story. She would tell me the things that other people said about me. I hadn't put it together. And she put on Facebook, where everybody could read it, that her son was having a really difficult time. And my first thought was, well, that's what you get for being mean to people. And my second thought was, how sad. I could have been a really good friend to her in this moment, because nobody's child should struggle the way her son was struggling. And I thought, at least she has other people to help her, but I wish it had been me. And then, as Gail told you, I'm a third grade teacher. And I look at kids all the time, trying to figure out who they are, trying to hide who they are, trying to hide that piece, all that piece. And I realized, I just realized this like 2 weeks ago. I thought, no one has the right, no one ever has the right to say, I don't like you for who you are. Because the truth is, I like you for exactly who you are. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. It's a good thought. I like you for just who you are. Yeah, you're born perfect. That's one of my daughter's sayings, you're born perfect. It's hard to remember because I think we can all improve, but in a way we are perfect, so thank you. We have 2 more storytellers. Did Sage get back yet from being taking children home? No. Okay. Then is Jack here? Jack, oh, there you are. Right. It's so dark I can't see. Would you please welcome Jack Swindlehurst, who I met at Luthier's. And Luthier's, if you don't know, is starting to take up with Allison Murchie. I'm going to help her with it. She's taking up the last Tuesday of every month, is now going to be in the evening, 7 to 8:30, storytelling. Because when I did it, trying to get storyteller adults at night, we did it at Platinum Pony, and it burned down. And they haven't redone it. But Allison has an in with Luthier's, and so we're going to have storytelling once a month at Luthier's. So this is not the end. So that's where I met Jack, and I went over and I collared him. So Jack, please come. Welcome Jack again. Give him a
So I recited a poem, and so she thought I should tell a story, and I didn't have any clue what to tell. I brought something that I wrote like 30 years ago, but I just thought of something else. This happened because this crumpling thing. This is very short. This is just very short, because I was at a friend's house, and you know how some people, the toilet paper this way or the toilet paper this way. I was at a friend's house, and they had a double long rod, and one roll was this way, and one roll was this way. I'm like, wow, that's cool. I go back out to Maryland and said, wow, you solved the problem. You got one way. And she said, oh my God, I gotta go fix that. So, and then somebody was talking about honoring the past and the future, and I have a story about that which is very short. I could recite that poem too, so I had no plan, except to read this, and now I don't want to read it, even though it's funny. So here's a true story. I lived on a hippie community down in Tennessee in the 70s, and our spiritual teacher would talk about, future tripping and past tripping. And it's like past tripping is you're worried about, what's happening. It gets you depressed and all that stuff. And future tripping is kind of like a squirrel getting out on the thin branches where the possibilities get really shaky. That was the metaphor he used. So one day I'm walking home from somewhere, and I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, something always bothered me about that metaphor, and that is like, I've never seen a squirrel have any problem with those little branches, And so I'm like, okay, I get what he meant, but it's like, it's still, that metaphor bothers me. So I'm looking, and I'm looking at the trees, and the trees grow up like this, the roots are like this, trees go up really, so the branches go like this, and the squirrels go up and they go across the branches. And out of the corner of my eye, sure enough, I see a squirrel. I'm doing that swoop, and I'm like, yeah, they're going with the energy patterns. This is cool. Going down towards the house. Now, the house is on this hillside, and we're in the woods. So you walk in at the ground level, and it drops off in the back, and you look out the window, and you see the trunks of the trees. And these trees are maybe like this and several feet apart. I'm looking at these. So I walk in, I look out the back of the trees, and I'm like, yeah, the squirrels do this swoop, but, they don't jump across. They follow the energy patterns. The squirrel, all of a sudden I see out of the corner of my eye, there's a squirrel up in the tree. And he comes right down the trunk, just about eye level. Turns and looks at me and jumps straight across. True story. Turns around and looks at me again. I'm like, yeah, I actually saw that. And the squirrel takes off. And so while I'm like saying, okay, well, the squirrel's talking to me, the squirrel comes down and comes right in front of me. Right in front of me and looks at me. Okay, confirmation that it was talking to me. This is the story. And I'm like, what is, later on, I was like, for years, I didn't try to connect it to the past tripping, future tripping thing. I just didn't even try to. And I thought about, telling the story, and I was like, so what is the connection? And why didn't I never try to connect it? And I was like, because I was in the moment. Didn't even occur to me. I was in the moment. That's the story. Do you want me to recite that poem, which is another story?
There's another story.
The Poet's Dilemma, which I recited at the... Would you like to hear that? It's a poem, but I'll give you the scene. Okay, there's two poets. One is the poet laureate or whatever. He's in his sort of Merlin-style abode. Just Merlin-style abode. That's his. The other one is destitute. Okay, so this is called Poet's Dilemma. It's not very long. So poets seek this place between reality and dreams. It's out of reach, though, into reams of paper crammed up to the beams, searching for that muse, that thrill, until dawn finds her perched to fly off the windowsill. And platitudes and prose impose questions that are always posed, and we're supposed to answer only what we know and leave our dreams for daily life to fill the feckless void of night. And then politics and folly mix with Pollyanna trying to fix the rubble left by willful dirty tricks. So who will rise to quell these words that only serve to bind our thoughts and blanch our nerve? Somewhere, a stoic poet arranges wobbly stepping stones in a wordless mosaic. Out the backside of a ditch beside the road from which he fell, loath to retell the solid guidance he left quilled in artfully crafted tomes that paved his way to poet's hell.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wow. So, our poet's hell. That's really.
It wasn't touching.
Thank you. So, I don't have any more people on my list. Those are the people that signed up. But we have room for one more story. Is there anyone in the audience that has a story that they would like to share with us before we vote for our favorite story of today? And while the voting is going on, you are going to be treated to a storyteller from last year who won the storytelling slam, Richard Richardson. But just before he comes up to share his story, is there anyone here that is not on my list that should have been? Okay, then Richard, I would like you to just come up here and sit for a minute while I explain again the process. So this is your vote. If you were here at the beginning, when Nina started and warmed us up, Nina, raise your hand. Remember Nina? Nina started and warmed us up. If you heard all the storytellers, then you may vote. If not, then you will enjoy while they are making their decisions, and nobody votes for themselves. That's the only, we're on our honor for that. And then while we are voting, we have a wonderful treat for you because Richard owns Three Sisters, which is a sculptural wonderland. Three Sisters Sanctuary. I just love that place. I bring all my company there when I can, even in the winter, right? And as a matter of fact, once I had Steve and me stay there because he has a bread and breakfast. So that was your birthday, wasn't it? When we did that at the bread and breakfast. But I didn't know any of this. You know, I just met him when he marched in to tell a story. And one of the places that we rehearse our stories is Saturday morning once a month, the third Saturday usually, mostly, at Emily Williston Memorial Library from 11 to 12:45. So anyone is welcome to come. Richard is part of that group, and we always welcome new members. Lauren is part of the group, and boy, does she have insightful things to say, as does Richard. So please do join us. It's an evolving group every week. Every month it's a slightly different group of tellers because we all are working on different stories at different times. So without further ado, do you like to hold the mic, Richard, or do you want me to put it in here?
I'll probably hold it.
Good. Great. Yes, thank you. And after Richard tells it, not my phone. If it's broken, I will pay for it. After we do this, after we vote, and anyone who knows, give it to me now before we start with Richard. So, Steve, did you get a paper? Okay.
Should I start? From Goshen, from the land of Goshen. My story starts, wow, long time ago, 40 years ago. And I was going through a separation with this woman who had 2 children that were mine. And at the time, one of us had to leave. You know, it happens all the time. So I was the one to leave. And I had no place to go. It was the first time in my life I experienced what they call couch surfing. You know, pick up the phone and with great embarrassment, you know, you can let me sleep on your couch tonight. And I did this for the better part of about 2 months. And I had moved into this house that was a friend of mine who I was going to become his roommate. And unfortunately for both of us, neither of us had any money. He had just bought this place. It was a 4-family house in the middle of Ashfield. And when he bought it, I had said to him, he said to me, the guy that owned it told him that to heat the house was $1,100 a year. And I said, what? You know, this doesn't make sense. Please call the fuel company and check to see what this might cost, which he did not do. And immediately, within the first month of me living there, he ran out of money. And the whole house froze up, the entire 4 families, and everybody had to leave, including me. One more time. Now we're couch surfing, singing all over again. It's Christmas. There I am. And I say to the woman that has my children, I want to be with my children. I'm going to come home. She says, fine. I come home. I spend a very pleasant afternoon with Christmas and enjoy my children opening their gifts and being part of all that. And it was a day that they predicted would be the coldest you're going to see in New England. And when they said cold, it was 28 below. Wind chill factor dropped there to 48. That's cold. And I had this van that didn't have heat. I don't have a house to live in. I don't have a van that has heat. And I don't have any place to go home to on Christmas other than this woman who would like me out of her world. So she finally looks at me at around 5 o'clock that night and says, well, it's time to go. And I was like, time to go? Where am I going to go? It's Christmas. You know, where am I supposed to go? Well, it's time to go. And I remember I got out and I got into that van. And I fired her up, and I had a backhoe heater in it. And the backhoe heater would go, it never put out any heat, but it rattled like crazy. And I got in that and I said, okay, I'm going to go home. I guess I'm going to go home to that guy's house. And I don't know where else I'm going to go. So I do. And I drive there. And when I get there, I see this big 4-family house. And it's pitch dark. Oh, it's pitch dark. There's not a light on in the whole house. And I say to myself, oh no. I go, oh, this is just not good. And remember, the house does not have heat. There's only one wood stove in one apartment. That's what this guy's dealing with. I get out of my truck and it's pitch dark and I walk up those dark stairs and I unlock the door and I open the door and I could feel this blast of cold air that hits me. And I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I reach here and I go like this and I find it and I flip the switch. And when I flip the switch, what I see is a waterfall in front of me. A waterfall. It has, the pipes upstairs has burst again. The water has come downstairs and it's 48 below, remember? And every bit of it keeps freezing. And I am now looking at a waterfall up against this wall and no heat at all, none. And I thought to myself, what? I'm like, this is craziness, man. So I pick up the phone and I call the guy's father. It's Christmas time. That's where I think he's going to be. And he proceeds to tell me a very bizarre story about the guy's car freezing on Windsor Hill. And he says to me, start a fire. I'm going to pack up my son. We'll be there in a little bit. I said, start a fire? I'm not starting a fire. What, are you kidding me? I says, you're not here. Well, you know, the pipes are going to thaw out. Where's the water going to go? He says, just start a fire and we'll be there. I says, yeah, I'm not starting a fire for nobody. I says, you guys can come. You're going to find the house as it is, but I'm leaving. I'm done. See you later. I walk into that bedroom of mine that I haven't slept in, and I grab this, you know, I don't know what the heck it was. I'm a guy. I think they're called quilts or something like that. You know? I don't know what it is, but all I know is that it represents warmth, you know? And I put my jacket on, and I get into that car, and I drive to the Whale Inn in Goshen. I go inside, I find the payphone, and I call my mother, 5 hours away. And I said, Mom, I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you. This is like Christmas, and I'm homeless. I don't have a couch to sleep on. And she says, well, why are you calling me? And I said, because I want to come home. And she says, well, of course you can come home. Just come home. I says, fine. I leave there, and I wrap myself up. I get in that van that had, I don't know how many people here would remember them, the 3-speed on the column, the H on the column. This is how old this thing is, you know? And I fire her up, and I start heading down the highway. I never experienced cold like this in my life. And naturally, everybody here knows I don't have a radio in that car, okay? All I have is the clunky backhoe, you know, heater that's just rattling on, rattling on, rattling on. I'm going down the road. And I just feel myself slipping, you know. Hypothermia is setting in. There's just no questions in my mind about this at all. By this time, I'm outside of Hartford. I'm outside of Danbury. And I'm on 684. And I'm driving down the road, and there's hardly anybody on the road. It's just me and a backhoe heater, and that's it. And all of a sudden, I look over, and there's my father sitting in that, you know, bucket seat. And I look at him, you know, and I'm like, oh, what are you doing here? And he says, you know, you're in a lot of trouble. You know, this isn't good what's going on in your life right now. You need to find some place that you can get out of this cold. And I'm telling you this. This is very, very important. And I says, well, thanks for the info. You know, I'll see what I can do. And I get on 287, and you know how that works is the moment you turn away is the moment he leaves, and he's gone. And I get on 287, and I see the Tappan Zee Bridge. It's 1:30 in the morning. It's 48 below. And there's the toll collectors. And I look, and to my amazement, is standing out there is this black-haired angel. She's doing this. And I go to myself, thought, this is absolutely impossible. It can't be. You know, remember, I'm going to get back to the temperature one more time. It just can't be. But there she is. So I throw my blinker on. I slow my car down. And she runs up to the car, the van, and she pushes the button. She pulls the door open, and this blast of cold air just goes whoosh, right on her, full blast. She looks at me. I look at her, and I'm still like, I don't know if she's real or not. I have no idea. All I know is that I'm thinking I'm talking to this woman, and she looks at me and she says, honey child, it's colder in here than it is out here. I will pass. And somehow I did make it home to my mother's. I was able to find a food court, and I stayed in the food court for about 3 hours. And when that was over with, I went to my mother's, and I spent about 9 days down there, and it warmed up, and I came back to Massachusetts. And when I came back to Massachusetts, I was hoping everything somehow would fall back into place. Part of the story that I didn't talk about much was the car. Remember that one up on Windsor Mountain? Had frozen, blown up, you know, blah, blah, blah. So when I drive home that day, back to that apartment, remember that I dragged the quilt out of in the right. So I pull up and I see the Volvo on this teepee up in the air. And there's two Volvos and the motors are pulled out and things are hanging and swinging as the man Tommy Burns, not only does he not have heat, he's trying to salvage his cars. So I get out and I walk into the apartment and it seems relatively nice and neat, which surprises me. And there's heat in there, which is the wood stove going. And he says, life's been hard, you know. I says, yeah, I can see that. And he says, so, you know, I'm glad you're back. You know, I'm trying to fix things, but I'm also just here by myself. And any company is better than no company. And I'm like, I know how it feels. You know, I get it. And anyway, I thought things were pretty normal. And that night, I had called a good friend of mine from the next town over, so I thought I could have some sanity. I don't know what I was thinking, but I thought that. And I asked her if she'd go out with me that night for a bite to eat. She said, sure. So I went home and I was going to take a shower and get all spruced up and look pretty good, you know. Polish myself down a little bit. So I go out and I grab my clothes, you know, all together. And I go into that bathroom. I turn the shower on. I walk into the other room for a moment. I walk back. I'm standing there and I'm thinking for just a second that this feels just a little wet. Why's it feeling? But then I'm like, it's just my imagination. You know, I don't know. Of course it's wet. And then I open the door of the shower. And all of a sudden the water just rushes at me as the drains are frozen in the shower. Oh my God. I walk into the room and I remember having a primal scream. And I thought, I don't know how much more I can continue. I just don't know how much more I can do. You know, like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. So I go down that night to my good friend Barbara's, and we went out to eat, you know. And I told her this sad story with all the details. You know, can you imagine sitting through a dinner with a guy who's telling you this? Oh, my God, it kept going on and on and on. At the end of the night, she says to me, you know, I don't have an answer, but I do have a little, like, you know, bed that's a fold-out bed. It's in our dining room, but, you know, you're just going to fold out. And you can have a blanket, and we can drink coffee in the morning, and I promise you we'll have heat. And thankfully for me, I went to that little bedroom, and I had some normalcy for that winter. That's my story.
To unveil. Did anyone not give me their paper yet? A few of you did not. Oh,
I'm sorry,
there.
I wrote other notes on here.
Oh my goodness. Well, did you? Okay.
No, I need a paper I can write a person.
Well, that's okay. Just do it on a little corner of it and give it to me. Here, do it on
Let me
this
give you
one.
something else. Okay.
Okay. So I think, my goodness. If those are the last votes, oh, you didn't get, thank you, sir. Wait, don't fall. Oh, my goodness. Okay. That's amazing. Did you get yours? Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. And was there another paper there? No. Okay. So I see it now. Okay. So I would like all the storytellers to come up and be applauded again. Would all the storytellers please come up? Every single one of you. Every single one of you has given us a wonderful gift to think about. All these different life stories. Here, let me put this in the middle. I'm just going to scooch over here. Can you come over on this side? Okay, I think that's even. Is that even? Okay, so without further ado, the winner of this year's Story Slam favorite story of the day, without a doubt, was Harold. And I want to tell you, it was almost unanimous. And I want to share with you, first of all, this goes to our wonderful artist. She didn't tell you, besides a mahjong player, she's also an artist and had a show at Mill 180 that was just so amazing. I went there and tried to show, to tell all my friends about it. And because no one can hold a candle to your art, this is a candle holder. And here is a CD from me to you. Now, I don't know who plays golf. I know it's not Lauren because she always has these stories about how she can't do it. Does anyone here play golf? Well, someone is going to play golf. Let me tell you right now. So,
My brother plays golf.
oh, great. Papa Joe, you get gloves and all kinds of golf balls and little things in there. And does anyone like coffee? Yes. Who likes coffee? Nina, you get the coffee thing. And that's from Brazil, fresh from Brazil. Oh, and I forget. You get these stories by Diane Volkstein. You're going to love them because I know that you like those kind. And who likes to read? All right. You get a box of books. And who else likes to read? Anybody here? No. No, don't know how? Don't know how? Nobody else likes to read? Well, you're not going to get a present if you don't like to read, let me tell you. Okay, so who likes, this is for you. My daughter writes a lot about Chinese medicine, and I thought of you after the story was over because I think that her story is called, her book is called The Energy of Love, Applying the 5 Elements to Turn Attraction into New Connection, True Connection. Want it, find it, keep it. You're welcome. So Harold, I don't give it to you. I'll give it to you at the end because you have you win the $50 award. Oh. I know. He wins a $50 award. Now, is anyone here particularly French or could be French? This is a TAM, and these are some books that Steve and I wrote one. Did you ever get this book? Nope. Oh, well, you do now. This is Steve and my book. It's called Tales of Mischievous Martha, New York City Wanderings, Foster Care, and Orphanage Life. And it's about his mom's orphanage experiences. And there's something else in there. Oh, it's one of the CDs for children that I do. You'll like it. It's got lots of music in it. Okay. And so nobody wants these books. Who didn't get a gift? Here.
Okay.
Did you get my book yet?
I have your book.
Oh, well, then you don't want that. Well, you can.
I can have another one.
Well, you could do Daniel. Yes, you could give it away. And who else didn't get a gift? Who else didn't get? Richard!
No,
Oh, you can share. Okay. And that leaves this for the audience because I'm not taking it home. What happens is I go to these tag sales that are helping children in Easthampton, like the We the People, and I bet on the tag, the silent auction, and I pray that I don't get them all. Well, this year I got those two for books. So I think that's everybody got something. So would you please take pictures for me, because I can't find my phone. I think, no, that was another person's. That was Alexandra's phone. So I need somebody to take a picture.
It took some already. I'm like 3% of the battery.
Oh, okay, you can't do it. Alexandra maybe will. Oh, and I want to introduce Teresa, right? Tracy from the Easthampton Cultural Council. Would you stand up? Because she does a lot of work on the Cultural Council. And if it wasn't for the Cultural Council and the Easthampton City Arts, we never would be here. Oh, that's your phone. Thank you. Now, would you please scooch in behind that table? Everybody scooch in, and you've got to really get close together. Yeah, no, we don't need the table. Okay, are you scooched in? You should get in the picture too. Okay, I'll get in the picture too.